actually. I think that was better than I thought it was going to go. So, welcome, Visma. Good to have you on. So this is our lockdown sessions we're doing on Fridays, and you're the first person we're interviewing. Just to give a bit of an intro, you know, Visma and I were just going to have a bit of a jam, and we wanted to talk about what life's going to be like after lockdown, and a number of other things, including, you know, how people are already adapting, and, you know, how can we adapt after this time. To give an intro into Visma, you know, anyone that knows him, he is a very, you know, one of the most authentic and natural people you'll ever meet. He's been a sort of long-term friend, mentor and colleague of mine for a number of years now. In fact, I don't think I've ever told you this, but actually, you might remember 10 years ago is the first time I met you, when I headed over to Amsterdam with a couple of friends because we were all interested in maybe moving there to start practicing when we graduated. And we came to your practice in Amsterdam, and you know, over the weekend you did a seminar on sort of philosophy, chiropractic, human connection. Yeah, and that had a really profound impact, to be honest, with me on that time. So sorry to interject into the intro, but that was really profound. And the reason is, and anyone that's studied in any intense course at university, I'm sure, can relate to this, that point halfway through the course where in chiropractic it became very medicalized, very academic, and sort of disconnected from what I was hoping and thought life would be like afterwards. And you kind of reconnected that and really helped me. So yeah, something I've always really appreciated. But anyway, to go back to the intro. So Visma, you know, had a very successful practice that he created in Amsterdam, Netherlands, for I think 17 years. He's had a number of sabbaticals, which he designed a very beautiful and creative life with his amazing family, Jyoti, and 2 children, Dali and Finn, who, you know, in their sabbaticals did some quite profound work with people in different regions around the world, particularly India, helping local communities. And off the back of it, his children ended up creating Nalu, which now helps get children back into school that otherwise wouldn't be able to, through the uniform loop that I'll let him explain a little bit about afterwards. He's a published author of now 2 books, and he's also onto his second practice, living in a house, or has a house in Bali, but just set up your second practice in Singapore, and was commuting between them before lockdown kicked in. So welcome, Visma. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, everybody. Hi, nice to meet everybody. I hope I can offer some really great value in this short time we have together. And I thought we sort of do a open question answer, organic-y type natural thing. So if any of you feel like at any stage interjecting, please do. You can just unmute yourself or write a question in the live stream on Instagram. Yeah. And we'll do our best.
So any questions, guys, like Visma said, pop in the live stream on Instagram, or those of you on Google Meets, just pop it in the chat. If we don't get to it along the way, we'll try and leave some time for it at the end as well. So Visma, just to kick off, you know, we're discussing the other day, you're on your second lockdown now in Singapore. So tell us a little bit about the last few months for you and how it is and how it's been.
So of course, all of our lives have been significantly altered. I think we're probably 2 or 3 months ahead of you guys in Europe, because here in Asia, it was already the first week of January when I was flying up and back from Bali to Singapore that we were already getting thermo scanned, and there was a huge kerfuffle at the airport just because here in Asia they've had a history of SARS and things like that. So they had a whole team where the infectious disease group, that the Singaporean government's been employing more than 1,000 people for 10 years, kind of preparing for this day. So we had the whole situation fairly well contained very early, actually. We were one of the model countries throughout the world. And then we had a few spikes and a few little clusters in the coronavirus outbreak. So we had our first, let's say, shutting down, which was kind of shutting down, but we could still exercise and catch up with family and walk with friends. And it was kind of mellow, just the bars and things like that were closed. Then we got back open, and a couple of really significant things I noticed in the mentality of the community here when we got back open was just I guess they all had a bit of time to question what was important in their lives. They had a bit of time to think, gosh, where do I want to take this gift called life? You know, which direction? So I noticed a few people who were delaying quite big lifetime decisions had made decisions, whether they were getting divorced or changing jobs or moving countries, moving back from Singapore back to their home to be around family and friends. Just some really significant big...
So was that in the first lockdown?
Yeah, that was in the first lockdown. Then, of course, that was after opening, after that. And then a couple of months went by. And then the 1st of April, they shut the city again. And we haven't been reopened yet. And it's been delayed until the 1st of June, up until now. So, yeah, there's just... I guess it's time to really reevaluate what your life's about. I think for me, if I can just share my own personal thing, I think crisis can really lead us to some pretty amazing things. Unfortunately, it doesn't often happen during the crisis itself. It often happens retrospectively.
Yeah.
I had one big crisis that I'd like to share with you all. In 1996, I actually collapsed
Yeah, I was
on a
going to
bus
ask
in
you
West Africa.
to do that. Yep.
In Ghana. I collapsed there and I woke up 10 days later in Tooting's hospital, St George's Hospital in Tooting in London. And I was in quarantine and I had no family or friends around me, and that was kind of like the start of 18 months of learning how to walk again, learning how to talk again. I also had a very significant near-death experience. I had the whole kind of enchilada that you read about. I had a very classic near-death experience. But there's a few parallels I think we can draw between the crisis that I had then and the information that we can extrapolate from that, in the sense that that was a very unprecedented occurrence that happened in my life, and this is very much an unprecedented occurrence that's happening in humanity at the moment.
So you touched on before about the retrospective part of it. So did you find, you know, I've heard this story before, and I know that there was times for you that you mentioned along the way as well as retrospectively. Which one came first, more profoundly for you, you know, or looking back now? Was it after the event had occurred in the crisis, or during the crisis for you, once you started to regain some consciousness?
That was two parts to that, actually. Because I had the near-death experience, I was completely blissed out of my brain to the point where you weren't really... you know, you couldn't really focus so much on things because you just had such a profound experience. But I think most of the concrete sort of lessons came a little bit later, getting back to practicalities, and, you know, I just decided to value my health a lot more than I ever had. I started to value my parents a lot more than I ever had. So things like that came out of it, and I can see parallels already starting to happen with a few families that I see here.
Yeah. Between the lockdowns then, those changes that you were seeing in patients after you opened the practice for the first time in Singapore, were those changes that you were noticing happening in the middle?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't been open again after that middle section. So it was that middle section where people had really had a chance to think about their employment, about their financial situation, around their health, around their family relationships, around their friendship circles, around their sporting activities, lots of things actually.
Yes.
There wasn't one single person that didn't come in to me with some sort of decision-making process happening. It was very different, significantly different than just a normal week in the practice actually.
Where a lot of people would be sort of talking about, you know, symptoms and things that are acutely happening in their life right then, would you say that people's mindsets were starting to switch on, like, perspective, the future, and, you know, tuning into a bit more of an authentic wavelength of what they truly want out of life?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot more longer term things going on. And I think, you know, one thing that we're victims to in our fast-paced society is very much this instant gratification thing. And I noticed a lot of that had left. And I noticed people who were coming to me for a little while, and after that first lockdown, they were coming in more... They just wanted to get some sort of human interaction, you know, and it gave me a really nice avenue to open up to the possibilities of just having that nervous system sort of interference free from the chiropractic care, and what that meant to their coherence of their body just being integrated. And I think that's a really taking care of the body, you know, what you're eating, drinking, who you're spending time with. But this whole chiropractic thing, I mean, I've had chiropractic since I was 2, so it's just such a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And I think don't underestimate the power of the adjustment and what that can do for that coherence, because it can really also help you make really crystal clear decisions when your mind and your emotions have been kind of stuck because of, I mean, if I look at myself here, I'm in my little practice and the walls are getting closer every day, you know, it's really compressing. And so that mind thing, you know, I notice with my own mind, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it thinks this and sometimes it's very inconsistent with its work, you know. But having that body in some sort of coherence, at least the body end of the mind-body, body-mind relationship through the chiropractic adjustment can really just help us with getting the coherence back into the mind. Some other people's mind has become very still during the time. Other people's minds are like a wild horse, you know. And I'd say mine sort of varies in between the two. But I do notice if I move my body or exercise my body or, you know, start to move my state, that really has a big impact on my body. I just noticed there was a question there. Do I have a practiced? I can't quite read that. Did you say it, Tom?
Yeah, Jake Neal just said that, you know, do you have any practice to keep yourself in coherence during this time, or you know, just to help yourself stay in coherence?
I think coherence is a really difficult formula, Jake. It's tricky. Like my meditation is probably my addiction. I've been doing that since after that experience. I spent a lot of time in India in meditation centers. And I'd like to tell you now that I'm sitting and meditating all day, but it's just not the reality. So I guess my practice is just moving my body, just getting out on my bike every day, spending a bit of time in nature, drinking lots of water. It's very much a physical thing that I'm working through to have my mind working well.
Yeah. And, you know, I'd say very much the same, to be honest. Whilst, you know, I love getting in the water, doing the, you know, meditations and things like that, you know, just having, you know, my firstborn child's 2 months old. So at 8 weeks, sleep deprived and rushing between everything going on, you know, routines are very much out the window. But actually, you know, someone who I talked about quite a bit, David Hawkins, author of a book called Letting Go, talks about a process of actually just tuning in and recognizing certain thoughts and emotions that we're experiencing. And actually, you know, Jake mentioned those questions about your higher self, you know, should really be your most authentic self. So when you mentioned before, Visma, about the future and those decisions which people are making, you know, surely they're not going to be good decisions coming out of a place of fear. So I always find, you know, a quick mental practice or spiritual, if you like, is actually just the exercise of recognizing what I've got and just letting go of all anticipation of what those things could lead to or mean, and trying to make a decision from there. And I would just personally feel a lot more relaxed afterwards inside myself, because, like you say, if we aren't in coherence, that mind-body connection starts to create a lot of stress and sort of uncoherence, if you like. And any decisions which we sort of make from that place wouldn't be very good.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess in just in defense of those clients that have mentioned that, a couple of them have been really thinking about it for 10 years, you know. It's not such a healthy space to make a decision in when you're in the middle of some sort of fear-ridden thing. But on the other side, I guess that was a trigger for them to just re-empower themselves with their life, actually, you know. And I think there's 3 main, let's say, toxins. One of them is, of course, your physical toxins from sporting injuries or not moving your body or seeing not so well. And then you've got all your mental and emotional things. And by the way, for a chiropractor, they can feel quite different. A physical tension feels different to touch in a body than a mental or emotional tension. And then you've got your third type of tension that's a bit more silent. That's more the chemical tension that we have. So that's the sugar we eat, the alcohol we drink, the cigarettes we smoke, the air we breathe, it's full of things, the medicine we take, all those sorts of things, and you can't avoid them. They sort of pollute the body. But if your body's filling up with physical tensions, and it's filling up with mental and emotional tensions, and it's filling up with chemical tensions, it's really difficult if that's not getting removed sometimes. And I also you know, that's life. You know, we've all got these major themes that we all deal with, you know, and we're all guilty of guilty pleasures too, you know. It's not a question of living this saintly, obsessive health thing. Actually, that can be quite an unhealthy thing sometimes, but it's more like acknowledging that we've got this thing called life. Stress is coming in, and I see the body, the physical body, as almost like a translation station, almost like a manifestation of all the things that happen in your life are stored in your body. And if, just getting back to that chiropractic thing, okay, I am a chiropractor, so that's kind of my dominant perspective. So the chiropractic adjustment really helps extrapolate those things out of your body just to a certain level. It doesn't take it all away, and of course traumas remain in all of our bodies, but if someone's at least emptying them periodically, getting back to that coherence and that sort of centeredness to make decisions from, the chance of you being there is just a hell of a lot higher than if your mind and your emotions and your body's also having a tough time with it.
Yeah, so just like we're seeing in the research, really, with, you know, all these different things going on in our lives and the front of our brains really lighting up, that having that reconnection between the brain and the body and the mind and nerve signaling just suddenly calming down, just starts to let the body and the brain recenter itself, so that we can think a little bit more like ourselves.
Yeah.
So I know a couple of people have been interested, Visma, to hear, you know, what's going on in Singapore out there at the moment. And, you know, even though you felt that in-between stage, even without seeing people, is there a shift in energy? You know, how does it feel out there being in the state that you guys are now? I find it interesting because you're a little bit in the future for us. You know, here in Jersey, we've been in lockdown for a few weeks now, for the first time, which I suppose is the same for most people in Europe.
Mm. So you mean, sorry, what was the question then?
When you're sort of walking between the practice and your house or around there, what's the energy like? What does it feel like over there at the moment?
Oh, it's so strange. It's really different. I'll give you an example. The other day I went outside without a mask. You're not allowed to do that in Asia at the moment. And honestly, I felt like I had the plague. Like, people freaked out at me. It was very, you know, I was walking on the path and people just were walking at me, and they're just literally avoiding me, actually. So that was really, I quickly came back home and got my mask, of course. But I thought, wow, this is really an intense response just for walking down the street. The citizens of Singapore are very law-abiding. They really have a lot of trust in their government, and the government's very poised with their approach to the citizens here. We don't have like tabloids or something like that here. The newspapers are very journalistic in the sense. There's no big drama being made out of it. They're very transparent, the government. So that gives the society a lot of rest. I notice if I tune into the BBC, I notice people are really happy with Boris Johnson or not happy, or protests in America or things like that. We don't have any of that here. Here is very, very orderly, but it's like it's a very strange ghosty-like atmosphere around the city.
So for us over here, you know, and I wanted to see, is it the same for you? You know, I've only been to Singapore twice for about 24 hours in transit, and it's always come across very consistent. But for us over here, you know, what we typically know as our constructs, politically, structurally, our businesses, you know, it really shows that it's a perception of the mind, because it just dropped overnight, and everything from, you know, politicians to leaders, businesses, you know, nothing could work and no one really knew what was going on. And since then, a temporary infrastructure has literally sort of been built up for this temporary time. And, you know, we're kind of clinging to the latest stats and whatever to see how things are going. Was it the same experience for you over there? You know, or was the consistency of the government's and media's approach to you, did it maintain that in people's minds?
Yeah, the government here was very consistent. I mean, you can't really compare Singapore to the UK, because Singapore is like one city. There's 5.5 million people here, and you can drive from one end to the other in about 45 minutes. So it's very different. And there's only 2 big border controls, Changi Airport and Malaysia. So you can't really compare it to all the different things, I guess, in England. But I wouldn't want to be a politician now. I think they've got an extremely impossible task of leading a nation through something that they don't really know too much about. So I have a lot of empathy for, not that I agree or disagree with a politician, but I just have a lot of empathy for them. They've also got families and they also have to go home to sleep, and I think, oh my gosh, those poor people having to lead this. But I guess a couple of things just to, I don't know, talk about. I guess just keep your mind pretty clean, especially when you're on social media. Just be really careful what you go into. I notice on social media, of course, it's very dominating. There's a lot of, negative films about everything from President Trump through to Bill Gates, through to vaccines, through to all sorts of different ideas about China doing this. And I find it all kind of important, but kind of irrelevant for now. I think all that'll happen later when the dust settles, when the truth comes out of what actually happened. But I noticed for myself, I just feel so much better by having the strategy of not exploring all that. And I'm not putting my head in the sand. I'm just kind of like, I know it's there. What can I do about it now? Not a hell of a lot. And I think it's helping me personally get through this period without having too much negative.
Yeah, I think that's a really important and positive way to be thinking. It's like I was saying before, the fragility of everything that we thought that was real, when it drops down, I notice that people really take a hold of things that are tangible. And just really like what's most important. What do you think is a really good mindset for people to have in this stage, to, if they were to let go of all those things they're clinging on to, the media, whether it be theories that are coming out about what's going on, what the future's going to look like. If someone was wanting to just ground themselves now and start to feel, like you said, recreate a new normal for themselves coming out of here and use it as an opportunity, what do you think are the best steps to take?
Well, there's a couple of things. I'm a really practical sort of guy, so I'd get into just simple things like decluttering your house. You're spending a lot of time at home at the moment, and when you declutter a space, you really declutter a lot of stuff too. So I think that's a fantastic strategy for just reflecting on past, cleaning out photo albums, cleaning out the fridge, cleaning out your bathroom. Oh my God, how many products do we all have in our bathroom? Just empty it and then slowly refill it with all the stuff that you only used in the last 3 months and the stuff that's been in there for 10 years. Just get rid of it all. And I think decluttering on a physical thing with your family home or your family car or your bathroom or whatever it is a great metaphor for decluttering your mind.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then on a personal note, I think just take this opportunity to spend some time alone. Like, we never get time alone, and as uncomfortable as it might be, it's also just a very, I don't know, it's a very rewarding thing to be in touch with that side of yourself. There's so much noise in life, and right now there's a lot less noise.
Yeah.
So spend some time alone. Great.
Yeah. And how do you think we're going to need to adapt after this? So obviously we're all going to come out of lockdown at different points and stuff. How do you think, I'm interested to hear, something I love about you is how you go from being so, on one hand, like tangible, practical, etc., and intelligent from that point of view, but you can also think creatively from a very right brain point of view and sort of go right out there. How, without sort of saying predictions and stuff, what do you think the world's going to be like after? And
I think our own personal value systems are going to really come to the forefront. Yeah. And I think we're going to be a lot more aware and conscious of our own things that we value. So I think, even something so simple as these shopping malls here in Singapore, I mean, the Singaporeans, they work all week and they shop all weekend, and all of a sudden they're not doing that. So, and a lot of people are saving a lot of money at the moment here in Singapore because they're not shopping. Okay, some people have lost their jobs, that's another story. But I think moving forward from this, I think your personal values that you hold within yourself will drive a lot more of your decisions than they have been before, just simply because life's been so busy.
Yeah. And could you give an example of that for a couple of people? I'm just thinking, just to make it relatable for some people too, things that they might start to focus on in their personal values.
Well, like, let's say you're just really busy, right? And you get a lot of stress and you go home, you might drink alcohol to relax and, you know, have a glass of wine at the end of the day, and it's all well and good, no big issues. Then you wake up the next day and then you go off to work and then you come back and have your glass of wine. And I think if you're really stressed but you do have a really big interest in nature, you mentioned before going for a swim, I think that you'll explore nature a lot more. I think if your value around naturalism and being natural with your body and natural with your mind, I think after this lockdown, you give yourself the permission to go and spend that bit more time in nature, seemingly wasting time, but very much in accordance with your values. And I think another practical component is you might just have a look at your friend circle, which people you value, which people maybe it's time to move on from, which people have been toxic in your life, which people have been great in your life. I mean, friendships are just an ebb and flow. You'd like to keep on to them forever, but I guess some things aren't forever, and I guess this will be a time where a few of those things will be painfully evaluated, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the whole theme or value of holism, where you start to see the different components of in your life and how actually who you are is a lot more than the sum of the parts of your life. So you might really start just looking at your life as a whole thing, as opposed to it being a career or being a dad or being a fireman or a sports person in a soccer team. That you might just look at all those components forming a part of one big whole. There's a lot of themes in the news at the moment, you know, humanity's facing this together. You know, I think this is a brilliant opportunity for us to see human nature and humanity.
Yeah, and human connection.
Yeah, human connection. So I just see a question pop up there. There has been a lot of talk about the negative impact lockdown is having on people. However, I have spoken to a few. TBC, to be continued. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's going to be a lot of negativity that comes out of that. It's really destabilising time, especially economically. But that's the other thing. I guess we're all in that together. So that's going to be a real challenge. And like I said, just move forward with those values. Those values I've talked about is just like acknowledging the natural cleverness of your body, acknowledging that your body's a part of nature, acknowledging that your body is a whole system and all those different parts of your life interrelate to make a very big whole you. And the last thing I probably want to leave you with as far as advice goes is just be friendly with yourself. Somehow, have a humanistic relationship with yourself. You know, now's the time when you are spending a lot of time, you might have a lot of self-chatter and a lot of self-thoughts going on, but I just urge you to be really gentle with yourself, really friendly with yourself, have some patience, let your mind and your body and everything recuperate after this at the pace of nature, which is kind of a slow-moving thing anyway. So.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. I just think the second part to just Rug's question there, saying that, you know, on one hand, you know, you've got the media, the mental health from all of this going on, you know, our constructs of money, food, things like that being challenged, your business, you know, if you're an employed person, etc. And on the other hand, he said that, you know, different people have said the opposite, that they're actually feeling less anxious with less stimuli, less consumption around, which is allowing them to be more present. I think this is a really valuable thing, because I think whether it be conscious or subconscious to that individual, it's obviously a choice that they're making and what they're consuming, who they're, like you just said, Visma, who they're putting around them, what they're putting around them. And that some people, I think, if you are feeling more present through this, then perhaps you have gone through an unconscious process of choosing to focus on your body, you know, the important things to your family, people around you, and things that you really, you know, aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
But isn't that a really interesting topic? The question itself is a beautiful question because it highlights something really significant, is that, you know, you can get the same stimulus for two different people and have a completely different outcome. Yeah. And we're going to see a lot of that now also, you know, so no judgments here or there, but it's like, you know, you're going to see different responses to the same stimulus. Just like we're seeing a lot of asymptomatic people with the virus. You know, we've got I think 1,000 people got infected here yesterday, and a lot of them are living in a dormitory here. But it's really interesting because they're all young guys who work here, and most of them are asymptomatic. They didn't even know they had it. And then we've also had 6 or 8 deaths. Don't quote me on that statistic, maybe it's 10, but very minimal. And then it's like, wow, how can somebody get it and not even know they've got it? And then another person gets it and dies, you know? So for me, that just brings back to the whole idea of you, the host. So,
looking
and then
after
we've got this same thing. A lot of people are going to have lost their business. A lot of people are going to have lost their jobs, and some people are going to respond one way and other people are going to respond in another way.
Yeah. I think that whole host idea is extremely important to grasp, isn't it? Whether, like you said before, whether it be keeping coherence, keeping ourselves clear, reducing the amount that we consume and have on ourselves. So the amount of combustion of whether it be nerve signals or thoughts in our body and toxins just starts to reduce. You know, I'd rather be someone who has it and doesn't realize it, as opposed to the opposite way around.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually, just to watch how that affects one person in a completely different way than another person.
Yeah. And that really, do you think that really comes into the intelligence of, you know, the innate intelligence of the body, and how everyone's systems are, you know, even though you may not have symptoms, you know, in health, we always talk about here the fact that, you know, people think that if they're not getting the flu, or they haven't got the flu, they haven't got a broken leg, they you know, don't have heart pain on a regular basis and take medication, then they're healthy. So that whole symptoms versus no symptoms for health thing, do you think there's going to be a difference after the lockdown's over and over this process is over, that whilst people may be fearful of, or maybe, you know, potentially too fearful of certain bugs and things going around that might be actually positive for their body to pick up on a lesser basis, like the common cold, do you think there's a chance that people might actually raise their consciousness of their health and actually place it in a higher value system and a higher priority?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think, you know, health is wealth, you know, so it's kind of like, at the moment, it's very much a hot topic in the media, you know. If you don't get that out of this idea of your health is important, then you're probably never going to get it, and that's fine too, no big deal, it's just how it goes. But yeah, I think just come out of this taking great care of yourself. Because, I mean, life's short anyway. When I died in 1996, I remember the experience itself. I came back from it and I said, oh, it doesn't really, I don't mind death now at all. Like, it's like changing a t-shirt for me. It's like whether you die when you're 20 or you die when you're 80, it's somehow, it's short. Life's short anyway. Whether you
Do you know what? Can I stop you there? I just want to delve into that question, because you know, you say that so easily about death. Like, you know, when I died in 1990 and I came back, I know some people have joined the call since then. So Visma had a profound physical experience of something that happened. Do you mind just delving into that experience of that life-death experience, and you know, what happened sort of in that process?
Yeah, so how it was, I'll just talk about the actual experience itself. So I'd never meditated in my whole life, but my father and my brother hadn't arrived yet into London. So I was actually dying there by myself, without any friends, without any family. And I thought, I'll just try this meditation. And I wrote the nurse Karen, she was an Australian nurse, she just wrote down a few last words for me. And I told Mum and Dad I loved them, and my brother and sister, and I had a girlfriend that I grew up with, and I told her, you know, fall in love, and it's been great. And I told them all I was fine. I was very happy. I wasn't in any pain, but I was exhausted. So with that exhaustion, I just kind of couldn't go on anymore. So this moment leading into my death was extremely significant, because it was a full surrender. And I think that's a great parallel with this unprecedented time with COVID. We've all had to fully surrender. You can kick and scream and do whatever you like, but the thing's happening, right? So I was dying, and I think that was the biggest form of surrender that you can experience as a human being.
So were you aware of your body dying? Were you actually consciously aware?
I was completely aware of it.
Shutting down?
I was completely aware of it. And also the doctors came in, and then they all slowly left at a certain point just to let me die. I was completely aware I was in the last 60 seconds of my life. Completely aware of that.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was a very full surrender. I was like, okay, I'm done, you know.
See, I've always learned this concept of, you know, which now I sort of start to feel more of, if you have a thought or a feeling or a symptom in your body, you know, humans are really quick to just think, that's me. So like my knee pain, if I just hit my knee against my bed as I'm walking out my bedroom, and be like that, you know, hit the bed, and I'm like, God, you bugger, you know, that hurt my knee, because you think you are the pain or the thought or the emotion you're experiencing from someone you had a disagreement with, as opposed to the separation of, you know, you as a person, you're actually experiencing and observing those things, being consciousness, as opposed to actually being the emotion or the physical symptom.
Yeah, no, at a certain point during the
that,
experience, you get very distant from your physical body. So at a certain point, anyway, everything went really black, like I was in a vacuum. And I was quite frantic, actually. I was looking around really frantically for some sort of life form, because there was no up, there was no down, there was no relativity. And then I saw this pinprick of light in the distance. This will take me maybe 60 seconds to explain. And then I started getting like magnetically drawn to the light. And it could have been 2 meters away, but it could have been 2,000 kilometers. There's no way you could tell. There was just zero relativity. And then I thought to myself, oh yeah, I was sick. Oh, I've died. Oh, I'm having one of those near-death experiences. That was literally the thought that I had when I started my near-death experience. So then, very quickly, I just succumbed to the idea of like, okay, I'm going to the light, you know. That happened very naturally. And to be honest, before the day that happened, I've never thought about it at all. Not once in my life, ever. I'd never meditated a single day. I'd never done anything self-development-wise, nothing. It was just a complete organic occurrence, right? So then my whole life flashes before me like an over-detailed short film. I remember tying up shoes as a little kid. I remember the coloured Legos I had. I remember having a fight with a friend behind the school shed in grade 10 on the last day of school. And I remember the worst days of my life. I remember the best days of my life. But all of it, even the shittiest timing, excuse the language, it was all screaming at me to get me to know who I really was. And so now, okay, so then I keep going and I get closer to the light, and it was so bright that I put my hands over my eyes because I thought it was going to damage my eyes. So at this point, I did still have some sort of attachment with my body, with the body that you're seeing. And then I looked at myself and I could see myself in the start of the tunnel. And I thought, wow, if that's me in there, who am I here? And I guess that was the one question that, you know, it was like if I was the seer, who's the dude there, or who am I here, you know?
Yeah.
And then that's where I lost attachment with my body, and that's where I went down this beautiful tunnel. It was like really thick warm car oil that you're swimming in, and it was just perfectly viscous, and it was such an amazingly peaceful experience. There's so much love, you couldn't. Now, if I'm alive in my body, I couldn't have the capacity to handle that much love. It would just split my body in half, sort of thing, you know? Like a lightning bolt coming into a tree. And then at a certain point, there was 6 chambers I could go off in. I didn't really choose any, but I sort of just went down the far left one. And I popped out the other side into this infinite cosmos. I was totally in the intelligence of the universe. And he's a guy that's really pragmatic. You know, I was into football and barbecues and drinking beer with my friends. I was like, what's going on here, you know? And you could sense other entities around me. I could certainly sense my nana. I could certainly sense my dog that I had when I was a kid. But it was very much an alone experience. It wasn't lonely, but it was alone. But the ecstasy that it was in was undeniable. I can't imagine having that much ecstasy being now back in the body.
And that was it a tropical disease?
Yeah.
Someone's just
I had
asked
malaria.
I had
malaria 3 times. I had hepatitis A from the food, and I had a kidney dialysis. I had pneumonia. So when I woke up, I was breathing.
Oh, so it was a multi-system dysfunction.
Yeah, I was breathing just through my top left lobe of my lungs. So I was breathing 1 time a second. That was probably the thing that hurt me the most. I just could not go on anymore. Every second I was breathing. My resting heart rate was 140 beats a minute. the skin had peeled off my hands and off my feet. I was 90% blind. I was 95% deaf. And I'd lost 30% of my body weight. So I was kind of unrecognizable to myself. So, but at a certain point in that experience, I started thinking, oh, imagine having a cup of tea with my mum. Or imagine hearing music again. Or imagine making love.
Did you start to download the information, all that experience, and translate it back into what life was now going to start to be like?
Yeah. Well, it was more like I started to appreciate life. What a great gift that was, to be given a life, you know, to have a fun thing with. And I just remember then thinking there isn't any right or wrong about it. It's just all one big entertaining thing. Yeah. But we've tangented off the conversation now.
No. It's great because, like you said earlier, there's a lot of similarities, you know, to people listening. You don't have to die to get the experience and come back to life again. You know, just to draw the similarities and where we are. Any crisis, you know, effectively what you had, although extremely profound and unique, is an experience. And a perceptual experience of our consciousness of our lives, which is exactly what we're going through right now. Whether it be financial, employment, you know, your business, not having enough loo rolls, everyone's having an experience right now. And so taking those similarities of you actually, you know, taking your experience and starting to reform a new life afterwards, it sounds like you became a very I wouldn't say different as in like not you actually became more like yourself afterwards in who you truly are, which I think is a great opportunity for all of us through this, to be honest, like to sort of drop off any of the shackles or the things that, like you said, whether it be habits, people in our life, things which we do that aren't very healthy or good for us and could be leaning towards you know, less satisfaction.
Yeah, and now we're just making a full circle. We're now back nicely actually to the start of this conversation about the unprecedented time that we're in. For me, that was an unprecedented time, and that often some of the nicest life lessons come out. They might not come out immediately, but they certainly might come out later from unprecedented times. You know, there's quite a parallel that can be extrapolated from a crisis you've had before to the time we're going through now.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, because you know, I love seeing you light up with it, and I know that it's quite it's a very unique thing, and I'm sure people really appreciate just hearing that experience, because it's not something you hear every day. You might hear of a book that you know you don't get a chance to read, or someone, but and just to sort of authenticate as well, you know, it can sound quite out there. You know, this is a genuine experience that you've had, and you're a very genuine person. I'm just going to quickly see, I'm just going to open up the other one just to see any other questions that we've had come through. There's loads of things that I'd like to ask you, but someone's just asked, you know, unrelated to what we've just been talking about, someone's asked, Visma, you know, how can one get the mind to chill and stop whizzing around 24/7?
I always like starting through the body. That's my pragmatic side. I think the nature of mind, whether it's your mind or my mind or a stranger's on the street mind, I think the nature of mind is kind of same for all of us, in the sense that the average human has about 100,000 thoughts a day. So to try and harness that is kind of futile. What I do, I prefer to start with the body. One, because the body's so much less complicated, actually. I mean, if I look at my own brain, it's just full of so much crap in there, and stories, and you know,
the whole time. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it doesn't stop, you know. And so I'd consider the idea of actually wanting to control your mind kind of like almost like an absurd concept. One thing though that I would really recommend is starting to watch your mind like you're watching the news from 10 years ago, or you're watching the weather report from a country where you've never been to and you don't even know what it is, you know? So you've got zero attachment to it. Just
so
watch
like a concept of meditation, of observation. So for someone that might be struggling to you know, if someone says, right, can you meditate, and you've never done it, you're going to find it, if your mind's already going at 1,000 miles an hour now, you're going to find it very difficult. So that's a really nice task that you just said, actually, just to actually start to observe the thoughts.
Yeah, just watch your mind. Like You know, they're not, I mean, if I wrote a list now, just the last 10 minutes of what I was thinking in between speaking, you wouldn't want to know about it. Like it's, there's so many random thoughts going on, from shopping lists to dinner that I'm having tonight to calling my wife and say, you know, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So to try and harness that, I really gave up on that because I just think that is the nature of mind. Yeah. So
Nice.
do it through the body and start to watch your mind with a lot less attachments to the outcomes.
Yeah. That's a really, yeah, I think that's a really nice, simple way of doing it. And there's many things people can do more advanced, but I think, like you say, if you can start to harness the beast and all those millions of thoughts that's going on, that's the starting place to then being able to make a good decision about something you do want to do.
Mm. Yeah, just acknowledge that the nature of mind is such an impermanent state anyway. If you keep relying on your mind, you know, it's a tough one. Unless you've got a very, very trained mind that's deeply rooted in logical understanding, then the mind's a tool. The mind's a fantastic tool, but it's a really horrible master. The mind's a great tool because it allows you to cook a meal, it allows you to plan a holiday, it allows you to get from A to B, it allows you to build a house, it allows you to raise a family, but it's a horrible master. So just accept the fact that the mind is, you know, having 100,000 thoughts a day, and it's difficult to harness that.
Yeah, and that you're not those thoughts. You know, something I think it's easy for people, if you have a very different or random thought, to suddenly think that you need to, you know, question and be affected by it emotionally. Do I need to do that, etc. You know, sometimes we do just have those random thoughts, and some will create an automated visceral response in our bodies, but there's, you know, a form of choice in that too.
Yeah, stick with the body. Like I love, that's another thing coming back to chiropractic. Like a lot of people come to me with their different mental thoughts and mental issues, which we've all got, and I just prefer to simplify it all by working through the body. If we can take care of the body end of the mind-body-body-mind relationship, I promise you that that coherence that happens when the chiropractic adjustment happens, that just has a knock-on effect on your mind. So rather than you telling me your problem and me giving you some wise solution that might be wise today and it's not wise tomorrow, I prefer to get the body's end of that relationship really coherent, really balanced, and as free as possible from interference. You know, that's what the whole premise of chiropractic is, that we live in this beautiful, well-organized universe, and that well-organized, perfectly intentioned universe comes through your body a lot easier when that nervous system is just a lot more interference-free.
Yeah. You know, so a lot of people on the call might not even know what chiropractic is and, you know, how to utilize it, but one thing they may know is it's really common for people to think that chiropractic is a tool to be able to fix something, whether it be neck pain, you know, a pulled calf or something like that. And someone asked a question on the feed before when we were discussing chiropractic as to this technique sounds different, or this technique of chiropractic sounds different and shorter than most. What is that difference? And I'd like to, you know, my answer to that is really simple in the fact that, you know, length of the time of the appointment or whatever aside, the reason why it may be shorter, etc., is just because of the fact that someone that's applying a true principle of chiropractic is going to go in and find something in the body, an interference that be, remove it, restore coherence and connection between the brain and body, whether that be, you know, something more energetic or whether it be the tangible nerve signals which we sort of see through the research, and allow that person to express themselves more fully. In through doing that, the body's going to heal and correct things. What would be your answer, Vismai?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes confusing for a consumer because there are about 150 different chiropractic techniques. We all do it a little bit differently, but that main, let's say, aim of the chiropractic sort of stays the same with all of us in the sense that we want to make a body less interfered with, actually. So don't be so drawn to that difference or that one works better than that. I mean, all chiropractic techniques, when they're mastered really well, they all work, actually. They're all brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
I've had lots of different chiropractic techniques done on me over the years that have been left to us by our masters, and I certainly don't use my own technique here. I use a technique that was developed by a guy in the 60s, but I've really mastered it and studied it and learnt it, and I've got my craft really wired. And any chiropractor that's done that, independent of what technique they're doing, their idea is just to keep your body as interference-free as possible. And so it might look a bit different, but the intention's the same, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Someone also asked, it's just a little question they've just asked about masks. What's the opinion, although not like you don't have to do it in the UK right now, they haven't made it mandatory, but wearing a mask. Any thoughts on that? Is it central to
I
them?
really don't know. Like it's quite confusing. Like you read here in the newspaper. I mean, everyone in Asia wears a mask, right? But then some people have it with the colour blue on the outside, and other people have it with it on the inside, and other people have cotton ones. Do they work or not? Or does the virus go out here? Or do you wear it to protect other people? Or do you wear it to protect yourself from other people? There's a lot of different thoughts on it. To be honest, I really don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, you know, whilst I think global instruction is beneficial to do so, there's a lot of varying research on it, and I know there's a lot of people working on it, so we might have more information a week from now. But I'd say I'm in the same place as you with that too. Just one thing I would say is, I've seen this a couple of times now. I just came out of the water yesterday and there was a bloke cycling along the road who I've seen a few times wearing a mask, but he wasn't wearing a helmet. So I think prioritize certain things first. Maybe wear a helmet if you're cycling over the mask. This final touch-ups, you know, to go through, I'm not just a big fan of you, but also your family. We got to spend some good time together in India a couple of years ago on your mission trip.
We did, with your sweet mama. It was so nice to have you and your mum with us on the trip.
Yeah, it was and you know, I always find trips like that you know, they're really profound experiences that, you know, taking on your experience and the experience that we're all having right now in this crisis. I think things like that are very good because they actually recenter. And I came out from that trip, you know, a different person or a more authentic person, because I had the chance to just be with myself, be around people which I wanted to share with, do something or serve people in the way that I wanted to, and then actually start to actually think, okay, well, which parts of these are actually who I truly am, and where do I want to go forwards from this afterwards, and start to cut off things that waste my time or, you know, aren't very helpful to me. But how, so just tell us a little bit about Nalu and where it is now.
Well, Nalu, as you know, I've had a lot of sabbaticals during my life, or the listeners don't know, but I really enjoy sabbaticals. And, sorry, is there anyone watching on the other screen? I'm just going to quickly plug in my battery for the computer.
So I just...
so Nalu is like a discovery. My children were going to school when we were volunteering as chiropractors, and we used to go back to the same place every year. At a certain point, my daughter had turned 13, Dali, and all her friends were missing from school. So she's like, well, where is everybody? And the reason why they weren't at school is because the Indian government had stopped paying for their compulsory school uniform. To cut a long story short, she didn't like that. She found that a really social injustice. And she identified this and she said, I think we should do something about it. So she went and bought a couple of school uniforms out of her own money for a couple of her good friends. And 2 days later, she went to see her good friends if they were back at school, and they weren't because their dads had sold the school uniforms. So she was like, oh, what? How can this be? You know, I've now provided you, but the uniform was like, I think 4 months' salary for the dad. And I said to Dali at the time, I said, if I was a dad living under extreme poverty like that, and I'd probably have done the same. So anyway, what we ended up doing was employing some university-trained social workers over there to educate the parents on the importance of education. And Dali set up a clothing line called Nalu. You can visit it at nalu.com. Actually, my book that I have just written, that's for sale on that too. This is not a sales pitch, by the way, but if you do want to read a bit more about my near-death experience, it's in the book. You'll see it on the link to nalu.com. And then Dali, she set up this clothing line and they raised money by selling clothes. And she's now given about 7 million days of school away now in India. We just got back from a few weeks ago, and you know, teenage pregnancy is trending down in the village. School enrolment has tripled in some of the schools that we first started in 5-6 years ago now. School attendance has definitely gone up. Rapings in the local area have gone down. There's just a lot more camaraderie in the school. Some of the parents, some of the teachers are getting salaries. Some of those people work in those schools for 10, 15 years without a day of pay.
That's mad.
So we're also starting to be able to pay the teachers. School materials are improving. So it's just an all-round great project to be involved with, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
Really one of my favourite weeks of my life. We go there always with a group of friends, 1 or 2 weeks, and we've got a team of 30 women that do all the sewing for the school uniforms, which are previously unemployed women. So it's got a really great full circle.
and have they still got that? We went to go and visit that little factory, you know, that little room that they were all in. Are they still working from there?
Yeah, they've got a little barn there. It's so sweet. All those ladies, they all get together in there and support one another. You know, everything comes on board with what they're talking about, and then they've got a job. You know, they can support their families.
Yeah.
And it's a great project. So thanks for coming, Tom.
It's amazing. And just to authenticate that, you know, I've been to these schools and met these teachers and worked with these children, and you know, they really are walking thousands of kilometers barefoot. And you know, I think we went to one of them, which was technically a boarding school, where you know they're sleeping on the floors with, you know, they're barefoot, sleeping on the floors with some couple of cushions and things. And the girls had split up, boys and girls, and the girls section, if I remember right, actually was caged around, that they actually locked that at night time to stop local drunk men, you know, going and doing not good things. So, you know, it's really, yeah, the work you're doing over there and that the guys have set up, you must be so proud of your children. It's
it's humbling, to be honest. It's a very humbling. I've learned a lot from the people out there. Honestly, we go there and we really think, gosh, who's giving who what here, you know? You just really learn a lot of, just like this unprecedented thing we're in now, you learn a lot about yourself because you're in such a different situation than you would have ever been in before if this COVID thing hadn't happened. And when you immerse yourself in extreme poverty where the average person is living on less than 20 pence a day, it's you just look at things from a different perspective. I wouldn't say they're less happy than I or you. It's just as long as they're safe, they're okay, you know. But that was the whole thing, this equal opportunity. Dalia's like, how can I get to go to school and those girls don't, you know? And then a lot of them become mothers when they're 15 or 16, sometimes younger, and getting married then also. And then the whole poverty cycle just repeats itself from one generation to the next.
You know, I think, you know, we're running out of time now, but I was going to say that it's been incredible to talk to you. And I think there's one thing that I would encourage people to take away from this call, and I'm going to take away myself, is the opportunity of a change in perspective. Through this experience and any experiences we have, don't let this crisis be the only crisis, time that you, or experience that you have to reflect and, you know, authenticate, tune into yourself and choose a new way forward relevant to your values. Have you got any final thoughts on where people can, ways in which people can get in touch or find out more about you?
Oh, they can, not really actually. I mean, you can friend me if you like on, I never do Instagram. This is my Instagram account for my chiropractic office, but I never even made a post, and Tom's my first follower. You can go to nalu.com if you're interested in getting my book or going to having a look at the Nalu project. Or you can't get it on Amazon. I just saw somebody type it. It's not coming there until August 9 it's coming. But I've priced it on my website for actually just the cost price that I paid for it from the publisher plus the sending cost. So there's not a profit or something in it. So it's $20, $20 US dollars.
Sorry to cut you off, Visma. We got 20 seconds left. We've really utilized this call. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. Really enjoyed it. And good luck with everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much. Listen, have a great evening for you and speak soon.
Thanks, man. Ciao.